everyone, my name is Jen and I'm just here to give you a quick recap of my 2015 in books, look ahead to 2016 in books, and just give you a brief introduction to who I am. So I am a 25-year-old graduate student studying art history in London, although I am originally from right outside of Washington, D.C. Let's see. Last year I read 145 books, which is a lot. Well, about a third of the books I read were young adult books. I also read quite a lot of fantasy, literary fiction, and romance novels. So I'm just gonna let you know what my favorite books of 2015 were in the order that I read them, not order of favorites. So, my first favorite book of 2015 is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This was a quick sci-fi read about a boy who plays video games and is sort of going on a treasure hunt, like a virtual treasure hunt for the guy who designed like the video game's fortune, basically. And it's actually a really cool read. When one of my friends recommended to me, I thought that doesn't really sound like my type of thing, but I decided to give it a try, and I actually really liked it. I'm not a big sci-fi person, but there were tons of great 80s references and all sorts of things that I really appreciated about this book. I really also liked the world building, I liked the characters, I just liked everything about it. Definitely a great sci-fi book to check out if you like sci-fi. If you don't really like sci-fi, really all around liked it. 5 stars. Another of my favorite books this year was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a literary fiction novel that is slightly dystopian, as it takes place sort of 20 years in our future after a plague outbreak. I thought it was a really interesting change of pace for dystopian novels, because I've read a lot of young adult dystopian novels, and I thought this was definitely a much more adult way of handling it. I also really liked the way that the story was told, as it had multiple points of view in both the 20 years in the future, present, and also in the past, right when the plague broke out and sort of a little bit before that. I thought that all the characters were really well-rounded. Also, I really liked in this book how I thought that the aftermath of the plague was dealt with really realistically. We had small groups of individuals living in towns, and then our main character was part of a traveling symphony and performance troupe that would go between towns and spread the news and bring culture to everyone, because as they had painted on one of the sides of their caravans, survival is insufficient. I thought this book was really good and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Another great book this year was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is a little bit of a historical fantasy novel in that it takes place in sort of an implied Victorian past, but our two main characters have magical powers, and they're sort of unknowingly pitted against each other in this magical circus, each going to create wilder and crazier things for the circus. And I just thought it was a really beautiful, well-written love story, magical story, and I was really intrigued by it, and it kept me hooked till the very last page. A little bit of a lighter read, but I'm not complaining. Another of my favorite books this year is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This book is a fantasy novel that is sort of set in a Polish mythology-inspired fantasy world. So the main character is chosen to go live with the wizard who is in charge of sort of overwatching their valley, making sure nothing goes wrong. His name is Dragon, so she's chosen to go live with him for 10 years, and it was unexpected for her. She goes, lives there, and just is thrown into this magical world that she didn't really expect. And I just really loved the mythology in this story. I haven't read a lot of Polish-inspired fantasy before, so this was a really nice change of pace. There's also some romance elements that I really enjoyed, and just overall a great book to check out if you're a big fan of fantasy or romance or both. Another great book I read this year was a young adult fantasy novel called Incan Bowen by Caine. So this is the first book in her new Great Library series, and I really loved this. I like young adult novels. I don't usually love them, but this one was one of my favorite young adult fantasy books that I've read in a very long time. I loved the world building in this book. I thought it was so interesting that there's just one great library in Alexandria that has all like the original copies of books, and that's what there is. You can have this world doesn't have printing presses, and I just find it so interesting when authors take things that we know and take for granted and go, but what if that wasn't there? How would this world develop? So I thought it was a really fun fantasy adventure story, and I can't wait to see where the rest of the series goes. Another one of my favorites from 2015 is Brandon Sanderson. I actually read 4 of his books this year, and I loved all of them. So I'm just going to say, if you haven't read Brandon Sanderson, definitely check his books out. The first of his that I read was this novella, The Emperor's Soul, and my friend recommended this to me when I told her that I was looking for a new fantasy novel. She said, well, check out this novella, and if you like it, definitely read the rest of his books. So I read this, loved it, and then I started reading his epic fantasy series, the Stormlight Archive. So far there are 2 books, and they are massive. Words of Radiance was actually the longest book I read this year, clocking in at over 1,000 pages, and I believe one of the longest books that I have ever read, but it was so worth it. I cannot recommend these books highly enough if you are a lover of epic fantasy and amazing world building and wonderful characters. Everything about these books was great, and I don't know, read them, just read them. I also started on Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy, so this is the first book, called Mistborn or The Final Empire, depending on which edition of the book you get. Finished this in December, and I'm going to read the rest of the trilogy, and then the companion trilogy, I believe the final book is coming out very soon, so I can't wait to read more of Brandon Sanderson next year. So my bookish goals for 2016 are to make some more of these booktube videos. I also really want to write more reviews for books on Goodreads. My Goodreads goal this year is only set for 100 books, but I'm sure I will surpass it. I just want to give myself time to read a longer book if I want to, and not feel pressured to read if I'm not feeling it, because what's the point in reading if I'm not going to enjoy it? Alright, so that's me. That was my 2015 and looking towards my 2016 in books, and I can't wait to share it all with you. Bye!